Hello everybody, today's video is a bit more of a spur of the moment thing, but I want to talk about something that I believe is one of the worst aspects not only about gacha games in general, but about being a gacha player. And if you agree or have any thoughts on this, consider commenting down below. But I think that one of the worst aspects about playing any gacha game, whether it's Arknights, whether it's Genshin Impact, Honkai Impact, Blue Archive, Azure Lane, Tower of Fantasy, Girls Frontline, Punishing Grey Raven, etc. It doesn't matter. I think that one of the worst aspects about any gacha game player is that you're grouped into essentially two categories. And no, it's not whale or free to play. Instead, I think it's more so that depending on what game you're playing or what characters people have heard of, you're essentially either going to be thrown into the category of being a terrible, awful human being, with comments sort of shown on screen now, or a lot of individuals are going to assume the worst about you. You have a gambling addiction, there's something wrong. You play because you don't have any friends. And I think within these communities, a lot of these are thrown off as jokes here and there, but I think from an outside perspective or from individual perspective of somebody who just wants to play their games, wants to have fun, wants to share their experience and their enjoyment with somebody else, it's very difficult to talk about. I think we all can agree that to some degree you want to share your experiences and the things you like with other people who are close to you, whether they be your friends or your family. But if you're playing a gacha game like Azure Lane or Blue Archive or even Genshin Impact, people are going to immediately gravitate towards focusing on the worst aspects of that game in their opinion. And a lot of times it's going to be, oh, well, that game is obviously appealing to a very bad or terrible demographic based on if you're looking at the setting or the age of Blue Archive characters, or they're going to look at characters like Klee and Iona in Genshin Impact, or they're going to look at Suzerain and Arknights. They're going to gravitate towards things they hate and essentially focus that trait and that thing they dislike with you, and it makes it very, very difficult to talk about something that you like. Genshin Impact is a popular game, but if you ask a lot of individuals their perception on the community, they're going to have a negative one, especially if they've never played the game. And I think it ruins, not necessarily the success of games, but I think it ruins a lot of the enjoyment you get out of them, because it's very difficult and you're taking a risk in some scenarios by saying you play a gacha game. Because if they've heard of that gacha game, or if they Google it, or if they've heard anything from a content creator or somebody else, the opinion they have of it can be extremely negative, and a lot of times you really don't want to face that outcome. I've spoken about Genshin Impact with other people who I know, and a lot of them kind of associate the game with solely just characters like Klee, Iona, Chi-Chi, Sayu, and now Kusanali. Sure, the game could have a bad reputation, it could be an awful game, but ultimately, I think a lot of times when you're looking at a game, let's say Assassin's Creed, let's say Cyberpunk 2077, the game can be pretty bad, but without those negative connotations attached to it, people are still going to give it a chance. But a lot of individuals aren't willing to give gacha games a chance because they assume they're appealing to degenerates, the worst people on earth. At least from the things that I've seen and from the things that I've heard. Don't get me wrong, I understand these games are successful, I understand they make a lot of money, but I also don't think it's necessarily good to play the game because it's very difficult to discuss that affection, that enjoyment you have out of it when people immediately assume the worst of you or the worst of the game. So I know that there are very good sides and very good aspects to Arknights, Genshin, Blue Archive. I understand that. I play these games, I love them, and I enjoy them too, and the community itself is great. But if you look at something like the Blue Archive community, because I'm more involved with that community, I will say this. A lot of times, if I'm scrolling through the comment section of my videos, I get a lot of individuals calling Blue Archive the pedo game. And the same goes for Genshin, the same goes for Arknights. Despite the variety of characters and despite everything else that goes into those games, you are going to have individuals who solely focus on one aspect that they dislike, and I think it's awful. If you scroll through Genshin Impact Twitter, you're going to find a lot of comments and claims and accusations against the players and the company because of those actions, because of the characters. And I think a lot of ways it really takes away the beauty, the effort, and the enjoyment that a lot of these games have, not just because you can't share them, but because it seems like you're boiling down all the aspects that makes a good game or a fun game into one singular thing to dislike, and that defeats the purpose in my opinion. You could look at any game and find one thing to dislike and entirely invalidate the rest of the experience, but it happens so much with gacha games, and I think gacha games already have a bad reputation because they're gambling centers essentially. So when you take a gacha game that is essentially a gambling game and then you throw in one aspect somebody dislikes, they're just going to find and focus on one reason to hate it without ever giving it a chance to shine, without ever testing it out themselves. I had never played a gacha game, and I honestly looked at people who play gacha games and been like, why would I spend thousands of dollars on any game? But I had never had a negative perception of them. I just said, I'm not going to whale. but I still played them. I played Genshin, I played Arknights, I played Honkai, I played Blue Archive. I play gacha games when they come out because I think they're going to be a good experience, and a lot of times they are. But by focusing and singling out one thing you hate, and this happens all over the place, not just with YouTube communities, but on Reddit, but on Discord, but on Twitter, it really invalidates a lot of other players' enjoyments, because who am I to say that you can't enjoy a game because there's one thing I don't like? Who am I to call you a degenerate because there's one thing you don't like, or one thing you do, or you play this one game with this one character? Why is it that essentially if you're going through a bunch of different games and you can have any aspect, no one really cares about the children in Skyrim, but suddenly in Genshin, now you're an awful person because there's children in the game. It's a weird double standard people have, and I honestly don't like it. Just by playing a game, you could end up berated in the comment section or berated in a server, or for some reason. I understand to a lot of individuals, if you haven't experienced this, it can seem like an over-exaggeration, and I get that, and I understand that. But if you're looking at it from someone who's played Blue Archive, who's played Genshin, who's played Arknights, and have tried to mention your enjoyment to somebody who's maybe outside of that community, it's a very iffy thing. I've had people, talk down on Blue Archive players because they look at Blue Archive and say it emphasizes and glorifies student-teacher relationships, so obviously it's a bad game. But you could look at Genshin and say Genshin Impact urges you to question your god and your religious beliefs. You could look at Arknights and say Arknights glorifies war and death and illness. You could look at any aspect and turn it into something it's not. These games are a lot more deep than just the character designs or the outside perspective and initial surface level stuff. You could look at Arknights and say, yeah, there's disease and there's war, but there's a lot deeper in that. So I don't know. I wish each of these games, all of these gacha games, not just the three I mentioned, but all of the games in general got the same respect that other games got, that the opportunities to shine got. I wish people would look at a gacha game and instead of seeing a gambling addiction or lollybait, would instead look at it and say, I'll give it a shot. But it doesn't happen. And when individuals can't talk about the game because they feel like they're going to be berated or reprimanded in some way, shape, or form for playing the game, it stifles the ability for these to grow, not necessarily in terms of revenue and of, player base, but just in terms of community outlook. If you are playing the game and you're only capable of interacting with other individuals online, because in person it may be a 50-50 chance depending on who you're asking, it stifles a lot of the interactions you can have. And couple that with increased popularity, negative reputations, or increased toxicity, leads to a negative experience. An example is Genshin Impact. Now, Genshin is a fun game. It's a great game. I play it, I like it, and yeah, I can play it here and there, but I ultimately do enjoy that game. In the same way I can enjoy Arknights, in the same way I can enjoy Blue Archive. But when a lot of the negative perception leaks outward to individuals maybe haven't played the game, it lowers the perception they already have. And if you feel like you can't talk about it because somebody's gonna have a negative opinion or somebody's gonna associate you with something bad, then it kind of stifles the ability for you to share that game with your friends. And I'm aware people have IRL friends that they play with, that they really enjoy, and that's fine. If you do, lucky you. But I just think it's unfair for a gacha to be judged by individuals who maybe haven't played it. If you haven't given it a shot yourself, you don't deserve, in my opinion, to say if it's good or bad. You don't deserve to criticize the players of that game. A lot of people who play Genshin and complain about it, they are valid. But a lot of the individuals who complain about it on Twitter without ever touching the game, they are invalid. Their opinion doesn't matter. Their opinion is worthless because they haven't experienced the game for themselves. A lot of individuals play Genshin and they may dislike an aspect of it, but they love the game overall. That's how they come back to it. The same goes for Arknights. The same goes for Blue Archive. It's fine to criticize a game. I don't think it's fine to criticize the players of a game, either because you don't like the way they do things or you don't like the characters they roll for. Guess what? I like Izuna. Guess what? I like Suzerain. Guess what? I like Yamiko because I like foxes. I have a thing. Okay, foxes are cute. I like these characters because they're cute. In the same way that somebody could look at somebody like Yamiko in Genshin and say, I like pink hair, and like Hoshino from Blue Archive. None of these things say anything about you as a person. They just say you like these characters, and that's perfectly fine. You can like characters and not have a bad personality trait because of it. So you've had issues like these or experienced something like this or had issues just talking about a game you enjoy, a gacha game specifically, I suppose, then comment that down below. And if you haven't, good luck to you, and I hope that continues for you. I hope you don't have negative experiences. But I think it, in a lot of ways, does kind of affect not only your willingness to play the game and talk about it to friends and family, but it does kind of affect your confidence in playing it. Like, I wouldn't dare mention that I played Blue Archive in public, but I want to be able to share something that I enjoy because I enjoy the game. So, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found this in some way informative or maybe even helpful, and you just liked hearing me rant kind of sort of about this topic. If you did, consider subscribing, leave a like down below, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.